This episode of Super Boothers is brought to you by the Photo Booth Expo in Las Vegas this coming March 12th to March 14th, 2018 at the Westgate Hotel and Casino. Visit photoboothexpo.com and use promo code SUPERB2018 for a key pass or SUPERB2018E for an exhibits only pass. See you there.
Hey everyone, Ryan here. We got to talk to Brian Miller this past week, and I hope you learned a lot from the previous episode. We had a very long discussion with him that just couldn't fit into one. So we decided to bring you our bonus episode today where you get to hear the behind the scenes of recording an episode of Super Boothers. We recorded the first part of the episode and stopped to take a break. I went to go grab a cup of coffee, and when I came back, Ismail was asking about the origins of Photo Party Upload and how it came about. Here Brian Miller continues the story.
So when we first got the idea to develop our own photo booth software, this was a long time ago, we posted on some of these online websites where you can post a project and then people bid on it. And so we posted this project description about what we wanted our photo booth software to do, and we got a bunch of different bids. And we ended up hiring this guy, Samuel, who at the very last minute, like they had, whatever it was, 48 hours to do this test project. And like on the 47th hour, he submitted his. So we ended up hiring him, and he was in Portugal. And so I sent him an email and I said, let's get on a phone call to discuss the full project. And he said, I'm not comfortable getting on a phone call. My English isn't that good. And this is all over chat. So we're chatting. And he says, I don't want to get on a phone call. And it's like, how is this going to work? We have this entire software suite we need help developing. And he said, and he's typing to me in perfect English. And he's like, I really don't feel comfortable with that. Like, can we just do it on chat? I was like, okay. So we started working with him. Samuel's in Portugal. He changed his entire awake schedule to be awake during LA business hours. And so it would be like 4 a.m. his time and it's like 3 p.m. our time. And he was killing it. Like every feature we're asking for, he's getting it to us ahead of schedule. And for anyone who has any experience with software, this is incredibly unusual. Like software development costs twice as much as it's ever quoted for. It takes twice as long as any developer ever says it is, and it arrives full of bugs. Like I do not recommend anyone to get into software unless they're really ready for like headaches and bugs and problems. But so Samuel's killing it. Everything's over chat, and he's awake at 4 a.m. And he ended up developing what became Photo Booth Upload. And when it came out, it had all these features that no other photo booth software on the market had. We were doing all this crazy green screen animated GIF stuff before anyone else was, with 90 frame GIFs and all this crazy stuff. And he would, fix bugs, within an hour, and it was just amazing. And so it went on like this for a few years. And then I booked a job with a really large corporate client that was going to, we developed this technology for them that they were going to take all over the world with them for their incentive travel trips. And their first location was Lisbon, Portugal. And they needed to be trained on the system. And so I was like, this is incredible. I'm going to go and I'm going to meet Samuel. No one's ever seen him or talked to him before. Like we had all these stories in the office about, there is no such thing as Samuel. Samuel is a room full of, coders from, China and Thailand, and they're all in this room and they work 24 hours a day around the clock. Like there's no way Samuel is Samuel. So I tell Samuel, like, hey Samuel, I'm coming to Lisbon. I'm so excited to meet you. I want to take you out for dinner and like do anything I can to express my gratitude for all you've done for our company developing Photo Booth Upload. It's people call it the Swiss Army knife of photo booth software. It's changed my life. And he's like, I don't want to see you when you come out there, Brian. I'm going to be embarrassed because of my English. I was like, Samuel, I'm flying halfway around the world. I'm going to treat you to dinner. I'm going to get you drunk, whatever you want. Like, I'm not worried about your English. And I have a background where I've lived in India and I've like traveled all over the world and I've, interacted with all these different cultures where I don't speak the language. I was like, it's going to be fine, Samuel. And he said no. And eventually I just said, Samuel, I'm not giving you the choice. I'm coming out there. I'm going to take you out for dinner. So I flew to Lisbon, and he lives like 2 hours outside of the city. So I took a bus to his small town, and my staff got together. And we had one photo of Samuel that we had pulled from like some test he had done, and we took all the projects he had helped us with over the years. Like he had helped us with a Simpsons project and a Modern Family thing, like really known, like recognizable green screen stuff that we. So we took his picture and we superimposed it into all these scenes, and we printed it as a giant poster. And so when he came and met me when I got off the bus, he was like shy and looking down at the ground, and he's like, "Hi, Brian," and he was so nervous about his English. He's like, "Hey, Samuel, we got this gift for you." And I unrolled the poster and showed it to him. He's like, "Oh, whoa, that's me in The Simpsons, and that's me in the Modern Family." And he like lit up, and I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be all right." And I was like, "Okay, so Samuel, like, he's like, "Are you hungry?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you won't be able to eat here because I know you're vegetarian. We're gonna need to cook a lunch because no restaurants have vegetarian food." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is perfect." Like this gives us something to talk about. Like, so we had to go to the grocery store and we had this like cultural exchange about like, he'd be like, "What do you call this one?" And I was like, "That's garbanzo beans." And he'd be like, "Oh, I thought it was chickpeas." And I'd be like, "Oh, it's both." And like, so, we started laughing about that. And then we went back to his apartment and cooked lunch together. And like, it became this bonding thing. And then, he was like, "Well, what are we going to do now?" And I was like, "Oh, what are those helmets on your wall?" And he's like, "I love mountain biking." And I was like, "Let's go mountain biking." So, it turned into this thing. We got drunk that night and like, I've gone back. So anyways, it was like this amazing exchange of this relationship that started just as technology, just GChat, that all of a sudden there was this human connection. And with this guy who literally helped to build the success of LA Photo, not only the success of LA Photo Party, but there's, something like 500 other companies using this photo booth upload software at the time that he helped build their companies. And so it was such a really special opportunity to thank him in person and to realize that like the human bond was stronger than like the technology that had been dividing us. It was really cool. Yeah.
That's so cool. Like,
story.
I mean, there's one guy that he actually did the Super Boothers logo. I've never met him. He's done at least 15 of my other clients' logos. I've never met him. I have no clue what he looks like. All I see is a little light that says that he's online and I can talk to him now. Like that's all I get. But that's the thing is like all of my staff that I've ever had there's always been like a little breaking in period where it just kind of like takes us some time just to get into a groove to where, I know what you're thinking, you know what I'm thinking, like that kind of thing. This guy, I have no clue how he does this. I can be like, "Oh, make this something like that." And then it'll come back and it'll be perfect. And I'm like, how in the hell does he do this? And why can't I get someone locally that can do this?
Totally.
No, seriously, like, we have this little badge and it says, and you'll get when it says featured on Super Boothers. And I was like, okay, I want something that looks like this. And I sent him like a janked up version of a badge. And then I want this, which is our logo. And then I want this, which is like a superhero on top of it. And he's like, okay, 3 minutes later, it's like in my email and it's the exact thing that I like dreamed up in my head.
Amazing. Do you know where the guy is located?
No clue.
Oh, you should ask him. So, I have a pretty similar guy, a graphic designer, Abby Roy, who's in India. And I've worked with him for 6 or 7 years. I've never met him, but he invited me and my wife to his wedding. Same kind of thing. And the amazing thing, this is a cool tip for people out there listening, is when you're getting started, especially if you can find a good graphic designer who is overseas, you can get low-cost graphic design. Like Ryan was saying, if you can communicate clearly what your needs are, sometimes they can really nail it. But the cool thing is to get a client request at the end of your business day and say, "I'll have it for you first thing in the morning," and use that time difference to your advantage. Yep. So the guy in India is designing the graphic while you sleep. It makes you look really good.
Well, there's funny enough, his name is Samuel. Whenever I had my business in Houston, we brought him in for like a regular interview and he's like, "Oh yeah, I do some graphic work on design, like graphic design, like on the side." And I was like, "Okay, well, like, let me see some of your stuff." And he pulls up like his, like, I guess there's like a website or something where like they have like all their portfolios or something. Mm-hmm. And I was looking through, I was like, "Oh my God, this stuff is amazing." And then I was like, "Hey, can you like just like random off the wall, like we were doing a postcard. I was like, "Hey, can you like do something like this? Like we need to do like a giveaway at a bridal show." He came back with like the most coolest thing I have ever seen. He like superimposed stuff. Like I did flowers back then. So he had like all sorts of like crazy flower backgrounds. And it took me like a while to figure out like what his little drill was. Turns out all he needed was just a little weed. And I would say, hey, listen, can you do this? And like, he like, yeah, sure. Smoke a little bit. And then he would come back with like the most amazing piece of graphic design I've ever seen in my entire life.
I'm not going to judge. Whatever works, man. I can get behind that.
No, there was one time where we were doing a catalog for a hotel of like 80 arrangements that like were just going to be like stock ordered. And like we had like a deadline of a month. And I was like, listen, tell me the name of your dealer. I will go with you. I will buy whatever you need. Get this done. I mean, but this is the bigger part of the story is you learn what motivates people. There are some people that are motivated by money. There are some people that are motivated by praise. More often than not, people are motivated by praise and just by saying thank you. There are some people that are motivated by like gift cards. There are some people motivated by weed. Sure. I mean, just whatever gets the job done.
Whatever gets the job done. No, I hear you.
How much do you think of finding Samuel was luck?
So Samuel told me when I went out to visit him, he said, I wasn't going to do your project. Like, I had forgotten about it. I wasn't going to do it. And something, I don't know. He was like, I don't know why, but at the last minute, I stayed up all night long and submitted it right at the deadline. And I was like, it's luck, man. I mean, it's luck. I mean, a lot of it's luck, not all of it, because, we probably go through doing test projects with 15 developers before we find one that we keep. So it's not all luck. I mean, it's us being diligent and making sure we actually do our due diligence to make sure we're hiring good people. But there's not a lot of Samuels out there in the world. That's what I will say. And I try, and the rest of my team tries to remember to thank him on a regular basis and give him credit, because so much credit this sounds like I'm overstating the point, but in the photo booth industry, I think can be tracked back to Samuel, not just in our company, because so many innovations that have come out of LA Photo Party have raised the bar of what's expected in a high-end corporate activation, and a lot of that can be traced back to Samuel.
I feel like we should do something for Samuel.
We should totally do something for Samuel.
I don't know what it is, but we should do something.
Do you have his address?
Or send
of course I have his address. Yeah, we send him gifts on a regular basis.
Let's send him a Super Boothers t-shirt.
Let's do something.
Totally. Let's do it. I love that.
What's been the craziest event that you've ever had?
So craziest in terms of like something crazy that happened, or crazy in terms of like an out-of-the-box activation idea?
I would say crazy batshit thing that's happened.
Yes, good. Crazy batshit thing that happened. So there are a lot of them, but one that comes to my mind is we were hired to do a green screen slow motion video at the Super Bowl in 2015. And the idea was the guests were supposed to be spiking the football and doing their end zone dance. And it was with a green screen, so it looked like they were on the field, and it was going to be in super slow-mo. But this was outside of the stadium at a dirt lot across the street, and it poured rain for days leading up to it, and days during the setup day and up until the event. And so the entire dirt lot turned into a mud pit, and the client had not provided any sort of tent for us. So they ended up rigging a tarp on a forklift over our setup, stretched out over us to try and keep us dry. So we're in the mud, like we had to bring our equipment through the mud, set it up under this tarp rigged on these forklifts. And then we start the activation, and there was a truck that came through to drain the porta potties, which were like just on the other side of us. And it started to sink in the mud and tip towards our setup. Yes.
And sounds delicious.
Did it blend in with the mud? Did it blend in with the mud, or you could tell where it was different?
You could tell. Like, this was like everyone started running kind of a thing. Like, this was bad news. So the event was a disaster. Like, the whole thing, like everything from load in to activation to poop everywhere. Like, it was just a mess. But on the way home, the team was driving back, and they got stuck behind a frozen poultry truck that collided with a live bee truck. I'm not making this up. And they were delayed for 3 hours as like the inferno of like poultry and like bees was cleaned up. So, but I mean, we've seen so much stuff. I mean, we've we've done large scale events with RFID where Samuel's had to stay up all night and fix some problem with the RFID bracelets the client provided and make it work with our software to, for in order for like Comic-Con to continue. And, it's crazy, man. Live camels in our photo shoots and who knows.
Are you the type of person that keeps your cool pretty easily in those moments?
I think I've learned to. I mean, a lot of it is depending on a team that's smarter than me now. There's, people I work with that know the tech better than I do at this point, and I really trust them. But I also like actually in one of those that I mentioned, this event where we had a big problem with RFID tech. The client taught me a really good lesson. Actually, I had a really good rapport with this client, and they said, what we do is we work the problem. We work the problem. So let's work this problem. How are we going to solve this? So it wasn't about blame. It wasn't about freaking out. It was about being focused on a solution. And I think that's where I like to be. That's like my sweet spot. It's like, let's not freak. Let's put our heads together and solve this problem.
And that's the thing. I don't think there's that many problems that can't be solved with either, money or just a shit ton of time.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's like, what's the point of freaking out? Like, you're not going to be level-headed to come up with the right solution if you're freaking. So work the problem. And that's something I say a lot to my teams. Like when we're dealing with something, we use that terminology. Let's work the problem.
I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks. Have you seen that?
Nope.
I haven't.
It reminds me of a scene where the guy's accused of being a spy and he's being interrogated and he might get executed. And Tom Hanks asks the guy, like, why aren't you, you seem very calm. Why aren't you going crazy? Why aren't you freaking out? And the guy's simple response was, would it help? Totally. I feel like that's exactly what you kind of touched on, that it doesn't really do anything to get all worked up.
I don't have a television and I don't go to movies, and we do promotions for most of the major movie studios. So I have some pretty funny stories of taking photos of very famous people that I have no clue
and
who they are. Yeah.
That's hysterical.
You mean taking photos with them or of them?
So check this out. So here's the story. So we got hired. We got a call like at 4:45 before we were closing up the office to go do Channing Tatum's wife's birthday party. Jenna, I think is her name. I've since learned.
Yeah.
So everyone had left the office. It was like the event was the same day. So I ended up working it, even though I rarely go to these events anymore. So I went and worked it with a few other people, and it was all A-list celebrities there, and we're doing the photos, and there's this woman doing like her leg raised up to her head, like vertical splits, I guess you could call it, in the photo. And I was standing next to the printer, taking pictures out of the printer and handing them to guests, and I turned to the woman next to me and I was like, oh my God, look at that. Can you do that? And she looked at me and she goes, that's my dance teacher. And I was like, oh, you take dance classes? And she was like, no, that was my dance teacher because for this movie I was in, I had to like learn these dance moves. And so that's my dance teacher. And I was like, whoa, well, that's crazy. Like, can you do it though? Can you stick your head above your ear? And she was like, I don't think I can do that. I was like, okay, cool. Here's your photo. I handed her a photo and she walked away. And then later I was going through the gallery of photos from that night, and someone was like, oh my God, you guys took pictures of Jessica Alba? I was like, no, that's that girl that I asked if she could put her head, her leg up above her head. Like,
she's also a very successful entrepreneur now.
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
So what's the reasoning behind not having TV? Is there anything behind that? Watching TV, watching movies? Mostly
I don't have time for it and don't have a ton of interest. I like documentaries and I'll watch those on Netflix sometimes, but I've never been one to sit still for long enough to get through the show. So
yeah, I think people are always kind of I don't know about complaining, but they kind of harp on how difficult it is to be a parent and run a business, and some people also have a job or a part-time job, and juggling all those things. So that was one thing people really wanted to have us touch on with you. How do you balance that now that you have 6 months of experience?
Yeah, so I'm just figuring it out, man. I'm a novice and definitely not a pro. And one thing I will do is like give a shout out to anyone else out there who is balancing running a business and raising a family. And there's some really shining examples. Mose, Francis, Lisa, Cherie, Aldo, Todd. I mean, there's so many people that are role models to me that have been doing it a lot longer than I have. So hit those people up that I just mentioned, because they're real pros in the industry and amazing parents. So for me, it's been a struggle. I'm trying to figure out. So my daughter's only 6 months old. I think that I subconsciously laid a lot of groundwork in my company before I had a baby that would allow me to get out of the day-to-day operation of our company, whether I knew I was doing it because I was going to be having a child, or I think subconsciously I did it intentionally for that reason. But the company can run without me now, and it took 10 years to get to that point. The day-to-day operation of the company can run without me. And if someone had told me 3 years ago, you'll be able to get to the point when the day-to-day operations of the company can run without you, I'll be like, no way. I am involved in every decision right now. People run everything by me. I have a huge issue delegating because I want to be in control. Like, that's how I was 3 or 4 years ago. And being intentional about creating systems, empowering managers and leaders in the company, working on the business instead of in the business. All those things took 3 or 4 years for me to get to this point, but they've allowed me to be able to go on a vacation with my family and know the company is going to be okay. For the most part, like my cell phone's on. If there's an emergency, they're going to call me, and that's fine. I want them to call me if there's an emergency. I want them to call me if there's a really, really big decision that needs to be made, but I really trust our team to do the right thing without me there on the day-to-day if needed.
When does your daughter start working events?
Well, if any of you guys have bought an Infinite in the last 6 months, I can neither confirm nor deny if it was wired by Simone, but you may notice that having small hands to wire a photo booth definitely makes it easier.
I love it.
Yeah. So we're going to put her to work. She comes and visits us at the office pretty regularly, which is really cool. Hey, it ties back into the lunch thing. Like, my wife wants to come to the office because there's lunch made. She has Simone with her. I get to visit with Simone. She gets the lunch. Like, everyone wins. So see, it comes back to the feed your people.
You shouted out some people's names before that you said were kind of role models of parenting and running a business. Is there a reason you highlighted them specifically? Are there certain traits that they stand out to you, or are there things that you ask them for advice on? Why do you think that they are role models in parenting and running a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I called them out for all of those reasons. So I called them out because they are at the top of their game in their business. And, so they're really successful photo booth own really successful photo booth companies, and they have amazing kids. I know some of their kids, and I've asked them for advice. Yeah, I mean, there's been nights where I'm like, I'll reach out to them on Facebook Messenger or pick up the phone and call them, like, how do you guys do it? And some of those people I mentioned came out to meet my daughter when she was 2 weeks old, so I had a chance to talk to them in person and ask them advice. I mean, those are the kinds of friends that I've developed over the years in this industry. And that's the coolest thing. I mean, it's so cool to develop products and software that have allowed other companies to grow, that have allowed other parents to have an income for their families. And then for that to turn into a true friendship is really amazing. It's such a cool part of this industry. And so we love to hear. So, like, hey, if anyone listening to this podcast uses our software or our hardware, so if you use Photo Party Upload or Photo Booth Upload, or you have an Infinite, please, and it's helping you to be successful, or helping you achieve a goal, or helping you feed your family, we love nothing more than to get an email from you or a phone call sharing that experience. So please share that with us. That's what we thrive on.
One thing I'm worried about is people listening that I don't want things to seem so easy. Like, for example, this is something I've noticed with you, is that you seem really good at building relationships, building friendships, connecting with people, right? And I've kind of talked about this on a previous episode where maybe Ryan seems like it's just natural to him to be social. For people that are listening and struggle with that, what kind of advice would you give them if they're trying to really succeed and grow, maybe not just in this business or in their career, in their personal life? How do you build that kind of rapport with people?
I mean, I lived almost nothing but LA Photo Party for the last 10 years. And just in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been able to have it be healthy. Like, before that, it was everything. It took my whole life. And so I constantly thought about it. I mean, look, I'm not kidding. a notepad in my shower that's specially designed so I can take notes, because I think of these ideas of things I want to try or do, or a new way I want to market, or a new innovation I want to try, and I don't want to forget it. Like, I'm constantly thinking about photo booth stuff. So the motto of the company that makes this notepad is never let another good idea go down the drain. I have that in my shower. I have one next to my bed. I have a jacuzzi in my backyard. That's a whole nother story. I had to get it for underwater photo booth testing. Real shame. Now it's in my backyard. But I have a notepad out there. So like everything I'm living and breathing is this company, and I love it. And so tapping into that energy and that love and that enthusiasm for building your brand and your company. Like, if you don't have that, you're not going to be successful. It's not like a regular 9-to-5 job where you clock in, clock out. So it's like, do you have that? You got to be true with yourself and ask yourself that question. And if the answer is yes, like, then it's about how do you build a team around you that can take, set a vision, and then build a team around you that has that common vision, and make sure your team is all paddling in the same direction, looking at the same goal. Because if you have that energy that I described and you have good people, it's contagious. They'll catch it. And so it's not to say it's easy. Like, there's been a lot of putting out fires. There's been a lot of problems we've had to work in the problem over the years. And it's been a lot of ups and downs. Last year was a really tough year for us. This year has been an awesome year for us. And when we're having a tough year or a tough month, like, I absorb that stress just like any other entrepreneur does, and it affects me. But if you can turn that into a positive energy to work harder and overcome that problem, then I think that's part of what separates a successful entrepreneur from one that's, having trouble overcoming those challenges.
I just ordered the Aqua Notes right now.
Never let another good idea go down the drain.
Amazon Prime, let's go.
That's awesome.
No, it'll be here tomorrow. It's free one day.
Yeah.
There's lots of vendors selling photo booths, backdrops, props, and all sorts of other stuff you didn't even think you needed. So what's one place where you can see and compare everything all at once?
The internet.
No. Try again.
The Google.
No, the Photo Booth Expo.
Come see us live and in person at the Westgate Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, March 12th through the 14th. We have some fantastic giveaways, and we can't wait to see you.
And now back to the show.
So one of the things that makes work really exciting for me is coming up with out-of-the-box, super creative photo activations that are going to meet a client's goals or exceed their goals, or give them something they never thought was possible. And so in Photo Booth Upload, the photo booth software that we developed, there's a lot of tools that can be used in new ways. So for example, we've done some really crazy stuff like rigging a camera over a slip and slide at the MTV Beach House in New Jersey. So there was no new technology needed. We used existing video functionality in Photo Booth Upload, but we took the components out of a photo booth and mounted them in a creative way. We've done that in bowling alleys before. We've mounted a camera over the lane so that we get an action shot of the ball in midair as the guest throws it. We did that for a Modern Family wrap party. What's some other crazy ones? We took a treadmill, we dissected a treadmill, painted the whole thing green, kind of like dissecting a frog, just to link it back to previous conversation here. Right? So we dissected the treadmill, painted the whole thing green, put it back together, and then had people sort of walk and jog on it with a 20-foot green screen background behind them to put them into this environment using green screen video. So again, that's like a function, a feature that's already in the software. We didn't develop any new technology. It already existed. We just thought about it in a new out-of-the-box way. So that kind of stuff I really love. We did this thing with Miley Cyrus where she released a video of her in front of a green screen without any digital scene entered. So it was just her with green. And then she asked her fans to develop their own green screen background concepts. So they came up with all this trippy, weird green screen.
That sounds like asking for trouble.
It's totally asking for trouble. There was a lot of lasers shooting out of boobs and stuff like that. But she had green pasties on too. I forgot to mention that. So anyways, the client who was working with Miley Cyrus came in and hired us to then insert the guest next to Miley Cyrus in this user-created Miley Cyrus video with user-created a background. So it was like a double user-created content experience because it was a guest inserted, and fan created backgrounds all added together. So these are the kinds of things that, like, when I say we use creativity, we compete on creativity, like everything I described are things that everyone listening to this podcast has access to. It's tools in our software that they can use, but it's about how to pitch them to a client in a creative, out of the box way that's going to create an experience, not just a photo, because as you guys have talked about on this podcast in the past, you can charge a lot more for an experience than you can for a photo. Did you guys know we have the world's only underwater photo booth?
I did see that, yeah.
The world's only?
Only, I believe, yeah.
What's the difference between that and like a GoPro underwater?
Well, so our underwater photo booth has all of the components of an above water photo booth. In fact, it has the same computer, same camera, and same flashes as the Infinite, but underwater. And so it's got a screen as well, and it's got a tether button so the guest can basically take an underwater selfie. So, that's it. Really, the same question is saying, what's the difference between a GoPro and a photo booth? So,
yeah. So, like, what was like the casing that you had to like do to get that made? Like, was that the most expensive thing? Was to make it like waterproof?
Yes. Yeah. So we hired a company that specializes in underwater housings. It was incredibly expensive. I mean, this thing can plug into Ethernet. It has a Wi-Fi antenna that sticks out of the water. Yeah. It has an RFID reader embedded in it so that the guest can go in the pool, take a picture, tap their RFID bracelet to the underwater photo booth. Then by the time they get back to their lounge chair and take their phone out of their purse, people are already commenting on their underwater selfie on their Facebook page because it posted instantly with the RFID upload. It's really cool.
Now, do you make that because you needed it for a client or an event, or did you just decide that people may want that you built as a product for the masses?
So I got married in Cabo, and there was a pool at our wedding, and my brother, NASA David, who I talked about earlier, brought the underwater housing for his point and shoot camera, and everyone drank a lot of tequila, danced our asses off, then jumped at the pool like at midnight, and David started taking underwater pictures of everyone. The next morning, as we were all reviewing the pictures, cracking up, I said, I'm going to make an underwater photo booth. And I did.
Of course.
Yeah, so it was not made for a client, but dude, we just went to Aruba a month ago and did an underwater photo booth in the ocean in Aruba. So,
Now, with all the costs of building that and hiring companies to do the casing, is that something that you do for profit, or is that something that you just thought was a cool idea and you experiment with it, and if it works, it works. If not, it was fun.
It's for profit. And I mean, this is a company that's meant to be profitable. It's not just for fun, but we have to have fun along the way, and we have to continue to innovate, and we have to continue to be creative, because that's the fabric of our company. That's who we are. That's what makes us tick and get up in the morning and keep it fun and keep our staff from leaving. That was one of the questions asked over and over. How do you retain the staff? Like, we keep it interesting. We are very clear about who we are as a company, and we take that seriously, and we hold true to it, and we look out for our people. We had an employee who had a seizure at an event, and the event was an hour and a half or 2 hours away. And I dropped everything I was doing and got in the car and drove down there and spent time in the hospital with him until he was released. Like, we look out for each other, and that's so
How
important.
much were you working this person? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, but I get it. There are times where, you have to invest in your people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had an office full of 20 people. I could have sent anyone else out there to the event, but like the well-being and safety and, I truly care about this person. I wanted to be there myself and make sure they were being taken care of and had everything they needed. And, I think that speaks volumes.
That's an example too of how it can sometimes be difficult to live up to your core values, right? Because it may not always be easy to live up to your core values. What if something happened to a critical employee? And like I've had issues too where I'm not saying it was easy to get into a car and drive 2 hours, but there's sometimes things that are just happening at a really bad time for your company, and only one person can do it, and they're going through something that you need to be there for them on, but you also need this thing done. So at those moments, you kind of find out really, I guess, your character and whether you actually can uphold the values that you set for the company. I think it's not always easy to do.
It's not always easy to do. I can think of there was 2 nights in the last 7 days where we had people at the office testing until 11:30 at night because we had a crazy client who kept changing the idea of what they wanted to do for their activation. and it was an out of the box idea that needed thorough testing. And I didn't need to like sit them down and say, you must stay here until this is completed. Like they know that like this like the logistics team knows that the event team is going to be screwed if the logistic team doesn't test the crap out of this and know 100% that it's going to work. So they're screwing over their buddy if they send them out unprepared. So they're going to stay till 11:30 at night to make sure the thing is flawless, because otherwise they don't have their buddies back. And so it's not all on me, like being the one to do the thing every time. I think in a health issue, like I was describing, I do think of that as my job, but there's a lot of other things where we've created this culture where people are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that we exceed expectations.
I got one question. With all this talk of people that are creative, and it sounds like you have people that are kind of DIY savvy, creating all these unique experiences. What would you tell people to, like, do you have any first few hires you recommend? Like, is it just the first couple of people that you hire are attendants?
At the beginning, everybody did everything. So, and that went on for years. We had a really hard time delineating roles. So we had, all of us would jump in on tech support. If one person was on tech support and the tech support line rang, whoever was available would pick it up. We don't do that anymore. We have trained tech support reps. But at the beginning, everybody did everything. And I think that's appropriate at the beginning. So you're looking for someone when you first hire who has a broad range of skills, I would say, as some advice at the beginning. But as you grow, I think it's really important that you're hiring people who have a skill set beyond where you currently are. So you're building systems and hiring for future growth, because you don't want to build a system that can't support where your company is going to be a year or two from now. Like if you're going to invest in a system, which often takes, I'm thinking of like, when I say system, I mean something like a CRM system or getting up to be able to use QuickBooks Online or whatever. Like those things take weeks of work or months of work and a lot of time and money, and a lot of time and money. And so don't build something for where you are now, like build something for where you want to be, down the line 3 years from now or 5 years from now. And same with hiring. So initially, I think everyone does everything. But as you start to see it as a team where you can start delineating roles, then hire for the skill sets that you're going to want down the road.
He's talking to you, Ismail.
You listen to Ismail?
So this is the thing. So whenever we needed to get analytics on the podcast, iTunes and Podcast Connect do not support analytics for podcasts, which is like very strange. Like they throw it up there and then whatever happens, happens. I am like fanatical whenever it comes to like researching products or if it's like something that we need. Ismail was like, I need to find a way that we can get analytics. I was like, okay, not a problem. I spent the next 72 hours nonstop researching but see, this is funny because he does this with other things, just not this.
It took him longer to pick an analytics tool than it did to get the whole podcast up and running.
But that was the thing is I told him like whenever like but that's the thing is I told him like if I'm moving this podcast, like it is staying there and I need it to like last for a while. I'm not changing it again.
But the real funny part is that literally the day that Ryan finally picked the analytics tool and moved everything onto this new tool, Apple announced that the next version of iTunes is going to
analytics. That. I thought I had read that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that was the thing. So like I moved everything the next morning. They announced it and he sends me this link. I was I am so done. I can't stand it.
That is crazy.
It was really funny.
This was the point that I was going to make earlier is that whenever you're in a leadership position, you necessarily need to build the infrastructure to where the work lies on the position, not the person. Mm-hmm. So you're creating the position that the person fulfills. I mean, not that people are easily changed out, but I mean, they really can be. It's the position that stays.
I agree with that. Yeah. And then it's about putting the right person. We call it the right seat, the right position, the right seat. So right person, right seat. But I will say we try and have an always hiring mentality, meaning that if we come across someone who's just got that spark in them or that amazing skill set that is so rare, in our case, it was finding 3D graphic designers, that like we weren't looking to hire a 3D graphic designer. It kind of fell in our lap. And it was like, if we let this person get away, we're going to regret this later. Like, so we sort of try and have an always hiring mentality where if we find someone amazing, we figure out a job for them. And we've found some really great people that way, where it's like, this guy Joey who designed the Infinite for us, he does 3D renderings, 3D graphic design. He came from a VFX background. Like, we don't do VFX in the traditional sense, but like, what an amazing asset to have someone who understands virtual effects and how to create them, because there's all these parallels. So we like found a role for him. He's super interested in VR. And so we developed VR because we were like, we have this guy who's incredible and he's excited about this stuff. And we think we can, find a way to make this profitable.
Well, I think this has been, once again, very valuable. It was a bonus episode that is as long as the
full episode.
Yeah, no kidding.
I want to extend
that one was good.
I wanted to extend an invitation to you guys specifically, but I'll extend it to your listeners also, which is we do free one-on-one demos of photo booth upload. Vivi is in charge of software sales. And so if anyone heard this and didn't know what photo booth upload was or wants to learn more about it, or I would love Ismail and Ryan to get you guys on a free one-on-one demo, and we'll just show you everything that we talked about in this episode, how it works in the software, and talk to you about how you can use it in your own business to win higher price contracts and compete with others in your market on creativity and features rather than on price. Like, that's an offer I'd love to put out there to anyone who's listening to this. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can go to photoboothupload.com and there's a form on there to submit and schedule a free demo with Vivi.
We'll have the link in the show notes.
We'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So that sounds great.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Brian Miller, the photo booth killer.